Let's talk about another pre-dynastic ancient Egyptian dog. This is part 40. Let's look at number 48. So this is the Manshiat Ezzat palette, or the Tel Ezzat palette. It is a carved cosmetic palette that is very commonly found during the pre-dynastic period. This was found in a cemetery in the eastern delta town of Manshiat Ezzat. Believe it or not though, this was found in 2003, which is very unlikely in comparison to all the other pre-dynastic palettes we have that were usually found like in the late 1800s, and thus we don't have the best provenance, provenience, background of where they're found. But 2003, like, unfortunately, I wish the study of this and the discovery of this has been published. I have not been able to find any actual articles about the excavation, but I now can trust and I know where this is coming from, and it gives me a little bit more hope that artifacts in the future are going to have so much more information, because I struggle with finding information of all these pieces that were found so long ago. Supposedly, this piece was found along with a collection of painted pottery with the inscription of the goddess Hat Ma'at, marble vessels, plates, and knives, one of which included the Horus name of the pharaoh Den. So I mentioned this in a previous video where I wanted to thank you guys for requesting certain numbers for this dog corpus, because I am continuing to do research on each piece that you guys request, though I've totally lost the comment for this one and I apologize. But one of the things I didn't realize about this piece was, one, that it had been found in 2003, and two, I had labeled this as from the pre-dynastic period. And I did leave an entire section where I wanted to try to figure out what period within a larger time period or what dynasty within a larger time period, but I couldn't find anything for this. So this was labeled as pre-dynastic unknown. But since it was found buried with a knife that had the name of Pharaoh Den, it has been dated closer to his reign, and he ruled during the later First Dynasty, which is also called the early dynastic period. It's one of those weird periods that Egyptologists kind of realized that there was a very distinct difference between the pre-dynastic period and the Old Kingdom, and so they just kind of inserted this other period called the early dynastic period. Typically covers Dynasty 0, Dynasty 1, and Dynasty 2. Yeah, mostly Dynasty 2 as well. So this is approximately 3100 to 2686 BCE. This then becomes quite rare because most palettes are much earlier than this one. You don't tend to find these during the early dynastic period. We actually only know of 10, possibly including this. Maybe this is 11, not 100% sure. So this palette is in the typical shield shape and has the large circled divot in the middle for where the cosmetics would have been made, though these are typically ritual items and they usually are not actually getting cosmetics made on them. The circle in this case is made out of the necks of two sauropods. Sauropods, I never can say that word. It's essentially a mythical creature that is quite commonly depicted on pre-dynastic artifacts, but then virtually disappears when you kind of look at the rest of ancient Egyptian history. There is a possible donkey or maybe rabbit, unclear. And then you have over here, you have, I believe, a bull. At one point, I think it's a bull chasing our dog, which is then chasing the oryx or gazelle, which the head you can see is missing from the top of this palette. And then on the right side, you have the palm tree. Unfortunately, I could not find any description of what the other side of this palette looks like. Usually they are decorated on both sides, but as you can see, there's a lot of cracks. This had to be pieced together, so there is a possibility that whatever was on the back has now been broken. The dog is relatively interesting in here because it actually looks a little bit like a later dog. It doesn't have that kind of larger mastiff type. It actually kind of looks like one of the more leaner dogs of the New Kingdom with the lop ears and the long tail. And it's very hard to see, but I think it might have a collar on it. So one of the most interesting things is I realized that this is probably the most recently discovered depiction of a dog, possibly. Though there is one that I did discover just by going through a 3D tour of a newly discovered tomb within the last 5 years. So do you want to hear about that one?